My stepdaughter said to me, "You will never know what it feels to be a real dad," after I reprimanded her for insulting me. My wife smirked and said, "You deserve this." I left quietly without a word. The next morning, the unexpected happened. I will tell you everything. First, let me quickly thank you for your continuous support. This means a lot to us. If you enjoy the stories we share, kindly subscribe to this channel. It will be great if you can leave a comment on which city you are watching from. We might just give you a shout-out in our next story. Today's special shout-out goes to Sam Franklin from New York. We are glad you enjoy our stories. Now let's go deeper into the story. When I married Michelle, I knew she came with a daughter. I didn't hesitate. I was 37, steady in my career, and ready for a family, even if it meant stepping into a role that wasn't mine by blood. Her daughter, Amber, was 12 at the time, quiet, closed off, but I chalked it up to age and the strain of divorce. I figured time would help. I figured love would too. What I didn't count on was just how invisible love can be when someone refuses to see you. I never tried to replace her father. That was the first thing I promised Michelle. I wasn't there to erase him. I was there to add something. A sense of safety, reliability, and I delivered that in every way I knew how. I was at every parent-teacher meeting, even when Amber pretended not to recognize me. I paid for her braces. I helped her fill out her college applications. I listened when she cried over boys and grades. I sat up late, reviewing essays she never once thanked me for. But I did it because I believed that consistency mattered more than applause. Maybe that was my first mistake. The first few years of our marriage were filled with hopeful denial on my part. I let little things slide. Eye rolls, whispered comments when she thought I wasn't listening, the refusal to call me anything but him. Michelle would brush it off. "She's just going through things," she'd say. "Don't take it personally." But when personally is all you've given, your money, your time, your heart, it's hard not to take it exactly that way. Michelle and I weren't perfect, but we were functional. She had a sharp tongue, but a gentle way about her when she wanted to be sweet. In the early days, she'd thank me for being patient with Amber, tell me I was doing more than her ex ever did. I held on to those words like they were proof that I mattered, that what I was doing meant something. But over time, those words dried up. Gratitude turned to expectation. My presence became part of the furniture, useful, but not worth talking about. I remember one particular Christmas. Amber must have been 16. I bought her the exact drawing tablet she'd been talking about for months. She opened it, smiled faintly, and said, "Thanks, Mom." Michelle didn't correct her, didn't even look my way. It was like I was just there, a wallet with a heartbeat. But I kept telling myself it would shift, that one day she'd realize what I had done for her, that Michelle would look at me and truly see the man who chose them both, not out of obligation, but out of love, because I did love them, fiercely, stupidly. And that's the thing about quiet men like me, we don't explode. We endure, until the moment we don't. The moment came on a Thursday evening, oddly quiet, when the house felt too heavy and the air carried something sharp. Amber had come home irritated about something trivial, her car keys, I think. She was snappy, rude, and when I told her to lower her voice and speak with respect, she turned to me with that cold glare I'd seen 1,000 times and said, "You will never know what it feels like to be a real dad." I stood still. That sentence didn't just hurt. It humiliated me. And before I could speak, Michelle walked in, overheard the tail end of it, and instead of defending me, instead of scolding her daughter, she gave a smirk and muttered, "You deserve this." It wasn't the insult. It wasn't even the betrayal. It was the final confirmation of something I'd refused to admit for years. I didn't belong. I walked out that night without saying a word. Not because I was afraid of confrontation, but because I'd finally understood something essential. Some people don't hate you. They just never saw you to begin with. I didn't sleep that night. I didn't even try. I sat in my car for almost an hour, engine off, just staring through the windshield at the porch light I'd replaced 2 months earlier. That damn porch light, flickering for weeks before I finally got around to fixing it. Amber had complained about it, and Michelle had added it to her mental list of things I was slow to do. When I finally did it, no one said a word. Not "thank you," not "about time." Nothing. Just silence. Like it was my job and no more. But that night, parked in the same driveway I had paid for, In front of the house whose mortgage I carried alone, I realized just how far I'd let myself drift from my own boundaries. I had accepted 1,000 small cuts over the years, sarcasm passed off as teenage angst, Michelle's passive dismissals, the constant feeling of being unwanted in the life I had built for them. And now, they were no longer cuts. They were gashes. Amber's words kept playing in my head. You will never know what it feels like to be a real dad. I could have yelled back. I could have reminded her how many times her so-called real dad had missed birthdays or forgotten to call. I could have pulled out bank statements or the folder I kept with her college tuition receipts. But what would that prove? That I needed recognition to justify the years I gave away? I didn't want to beg for appreciation. I wanted to stop bleeding for people who weren't offering bandages. The house was still and dark when I returned inside. Hours later, Michelle was in bed, back turned, phone glowing in her hand. She didn't look up. I didn't say anything. I just stepped into the guest room and closed the door. It wasn't a dramatic move, it was survival. I lay down on that stiff mattress and stared at the ceiling, numb. That night marked something in me. Not anger, not even heartbreak, just clarity. And that's far more dangerous to a dead relationship than any fight. The next morning, I got up early. Coffee brewed, quiet as usual. I wore the same robe I always did, sat in the same kitchen I'd helped renovate, and made a list. Not out of spite, not out of cruelty, but because something had shifted inside me. The line had been crossed, and I wasn't going to pretend it hadn't. I called my banker first. Effective immediately, I said, cancel all direct payments to Amber's college. Stop the transfer. I'll handle any penalties. He asked me if I was sure. I had never been more sure of anything in my life. Next, I canceled her phone line. It had been under my account since she was 15. I'd paid the bills without fail, even when she maxed out data or cracked her screen for the third time. She once called me stingy because I didn't upgrade her to the newest iPhone the week it dropped. No more. Finally, I left a short note on the kitchen table. No anger. No accusations. Just facts. Amber, since I am not a real dad, I trust your real father will now step up and support you. Your college fees and phone bill have been discontinued. I suggest you speak with your mother regarding your next steps. Respect is earned, and mine has run dry. I signed it simply, Mark. I left before anyone else woke up. Not because I was running. Because I didn't want to be talked out of it. Because I didn't want to hear Michelle's voice laced with false concern or Amber's theatrical outrage. I wanted to leave them to sit in the consequences. Later that day, Michelle called me 4 times. I didn't pick up. Then came the texts. Can we talk? You're being extreme. She's just a kid, Mark. Don't do this. No apology. Not once. Not, I'm sorry I didn't defend you. Not, you didn't deserve that. Just damage control. That evening, I returned home to find Amber pacing in the living room, red-eyed and spitting venom. You think this makes you a man? She snapped. Cutting me off like this? I looked at her for what felt like the first time, not as someone I needed to win over, not as someone I had to please, but as someone who had shown me exactly who she was. I don't need to prove I'm a man, I said. I just finally realized I'm not anyone's doormat. Michelle stood behind her, arms crossed, expression unreadable. Mark, she said, you're overreacting. That was the moment I knew. Knew this wasn't about just Amber anymore. Michelle didn't think anything was wrong. She thought I was being dramatic. She'd rather call me irrational than admit she'd let this go too far. I turned and walked upstairs without another word. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel small. I felt free. The silence in the house that week wasn't peaceful, it was charged, buzzing with the discomfort of people not used to hearing no. I moved quietly, methodically, sticking to routines that now felt unfamiliar in the same space. The kitchen still smelled like her cinnamon candles. The couch still had that sag from all those late-night Netflix marathons. But the warmth had gone out of everything. Now, I watched Michelle and Amber like people I once knew in a life I no longer belonged to. Amber avoided me at first, slamming doors, blasting music from her room like a teenager all over again. But I wasn't interested in playing house anymore. She came downstairs 2 days later, phone in hand, face pale and pinched. My service isn't working, she said flatly. I didn't even look up from my paper. I know. You canceled it? Yes. She blinked, as if I'd suddenly spoken in another language. You can't just, I did. Her jaw tensed. You're unbelievable. No, I said, folding the paper slowly. What's unbelievable is that I let this go on as long as I did. Michelle chimed in from the hallway, her voice sharp and impatient. Can we please not do this? Amber has finals coming up. She needs her phone for school. She can use Wi-Fi, I replied. And if she needs more than that, her real father can handle it. That sentence landed like a slap. Michelle stiffened, her mouth twitching in annoyance. Amber stormed off, muttering something under her breath, but I caught it. Petty old bastard. I didn't react. Not because I wasn't angry. I was furious, but because I had learned that silence cuts deeper than shouting ever could. My silence was a wall they could no longer climb. And behind it, I was rebuilding something I hadn't had in years, self-respect. Later that day, Michelle finally confronted me. You're seriously going to punish her over some words? She's a kid, Mark. She's 21, I replied. And she's not the only one who spoke. Michelle's eyes narrowed. Oh, so now you're punishing me too? I stared at her. Do you even hear yourself? You stood there and smirked when your daughter humiliated me. You didn't defend me. You didn't say a word. And now that the money stopped, now you want to talk. She was angry. So was I. Her hands were on her hips now. You're acting like a victim. No, I said, walking past her toward the guest room. I'm acting like a man who's done being used. That night, I got a call from her father, Amber's biological dad, a man I'd never spoken to directly before. He was polite, almost sheepish. Hey, Michelle said you pulled back on college tuition? Look, I know we've never really talked, but maybe we can work something out. I laughed. I couldn't help it. Sir, I said, I've been paying for a daughter who's not mine for nearly a decade while you were a ghost. You don't get to work something out now. Click. And just like that, every piece of the illusion I'd been living cracked into something sharp and unforgiving. By week's end, Amber was back home full-time, temporarily suspended from her college due to missed payments. Michelle was cold, sarcastic, and stopped wearing her wedding ring. She cooked only for herself, slammed drawers, left lights on like I was invisible. They thought they could shame me back into place. But shame only works when you still care what someone thinks. I didn't. Not anymore. They'd shown me exactly who they were, and I was starting to accept that I had allowed this. That realization didn't break me. It rebuilt me. Amber's tantrums dulled after the first week. It wasn't that she'd matured overnight. It was that reality had finally landed. She'd burned through her savings in 3 days, couldn't reach her father anymore. He'd stopped answering her texts altogether, and her professors weren't sympathetic to her financial emergency. The little ecosystem she had thrived in, where consequences were always absorbed by me, was gone. She was now exposed to the raw chill of accountability, and it didn't suit her. Michelle, for her part, didn't explode. She froze, gave me the silent treatment with a theatrical precision that only years of resentment can refine. But it wasn't real silence. It was the kind that sighed loudly while folding laundry. The kind that slammed plates just loud enough for me to hear. It was a silence meant to punish, to shame, to coerce me back into position. The role I had been quietly playing for so long, the reliable, invisible man who carried everything without asking for thanks. She began making petty decisions, too. Small things that weren't about the tasks themselves, but about control. She started doing laundry only for herself and Amber. She made separate meals. She even moved some of my belongings out of the master bedroom and into the guest room. She didn't ask, just did it, as if I should have known my place by now. One night, I walked into the kitchen to grab a glass of water and found Amber sitting at the island, scrolling through her phone on Wi-Fi, of course. She didn't acknowledge me. Not even a glance. I poured my water, turned to leave, and just before I walked out, she muttered under her breath, "You ruined everything." I paused. No, I said calmly. I stopped pretending. The next day, Michelle tried a different tactic, nostalgia. She sat next to me on the couch with her phone in hand and started showing me old pictures, photos of the 3 of us on vacation, Christmas mornings, Amber's high school graduation. Look at how far we've come, she said, voice softer than it had been in weeks. I studied her face. She wasn't remembering. She was negotiating. You don't really want to throw this away, do you? I looked her straight in the eyes. I didn't throw anything away. I just stopped funding people who don't respect me. Her softness vanished. Her face hardened in an instant. You're being cruel. No, I replied, standing. Cruelty is watching someone give you everything and offering nothing but contempt in return. From that point forward, the house was divided. A cold war with no movement, just static bitterness. I began packing a few things slowly, not because I was leaving yet, but because I knew, deep in my bones, that I couldn't breathe in that house anymore. The air itself had become poisoned by years of passive betrayal. Michelle finally snapped 2 nights later. I was reading in the guest room when she barged in. No knock, her face red with frustration. You're just going to pretend like this is normal now? Like we live in separate houses under the same roof? I didn't choose that, I said, not even looking up from the page. You're being a coward, she hissed. You're trying to punish me and my daughter because your ego got bruised. I slowly lowered the book. No, I said. I'm finally realizing that I've been punishing myself for staying in a marriage where I was never seen. She didn't respond, just stood there, breathing hard, fists clenched. She was waiting for me to backpedal, to apologize, to cave like I always had. But I didn't, because the cracks in our house weren't new. They'd been forming for years. I just finally stopped covering them with fresh paint. There's a particular moment in every unraveling when the truth, once hidden beneath excuses and denial, rises to the surface so plainly that it can't be unseen. It doesn't explode into the room, it creeps in. Quiet, sharp, and final. For me, it came on a Wednesday morning, a day like any other, when Michelle asked if I could do something about the water heater. She didn't say please. She didn't even look up from her phone. I stared at her across the kitchen table, her robe loosely tied, her coffee half finished. And for a moment, all I could think about was how many things I'd done something about over the years, how many light bulbs changed, tires replaced, bills paid, checkup scheduled, all while she texted, all while Amber rolled her eyes, all while I was supposed to be grateful for a place in their shadow. No, I said, evenly. Call a plumber. She looked up then, genuinely stunned, as if the word had never existed in her version of me. What? I said, call a plumber. She blinked, as if I'd spoken a foreign language. You're being petty. No, Michelle. I'm being unavailable. That set her off. She pushed back from the table hard enough to make the chair screech. You know what? I'm tired of this damn martyr act. You walk around like some wounded saint, like you've been so mistreated. Newsflash, Mark, you chose this. You stepped in. Nobody forced you. I nodded. And I can step out. You think you're such a good man, she snapped. But you're just bitter. You wanted a thank you parade for being a stepdad? That's not how this works. You don't get a medal for doing the bare minimum. I could have yelled. I could have reminded her that there was nothing minimum about paying for a college I never visited, driving a girl to appointments where I wasn't allowed in the room, staying late at work just to make sure they had what they wanted. But I didn't, because the mask had finally slipped. She hadn't just stopped defending me. She never respected me to begin with. Everything I'd ever done was, to her, a debt I owed, not a gift I gave. And I was done paying. I'm filing for divorce, I said calmly. She froze. You're not serious. I am. You're going to throw away 15 years over one fight? This wasn't one fight, I said. This was 15 years of me trying to earn love you were never willing to give. She stared at me, mouth open slightly, like the words couldn't quite fit in her world. You don't mean that, she whispered. But I did. With every piece of me. That night, I didn't sleep in the guest room. I packed a suitcase, checked into a quiet hotel, and turned off my phone. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling again, but this time, the air felt different. Lighter. I wasn't suffocating in silence anymore. I was finally listening to it. For the first time in years, I chose me. And that choice felt like freedom. The lawyer's office smelled like old leather and fresh coffee, oddly comforting, like a place where hard decisions had been made so often that the walls absorbed the resolve of the people who sat there. I didn't dress up for it. No tie. Just a plain shirt and jeans. I wasn't there to impress anyone. I was there to finish something. The lawyer was younger than I expected, professional but calm, and he slid the documents across the table like he was handing me freedom in a folder. Once you sign these, he said, you'll officially initiate proceedings. Are you sure this is what you want? I didn't hesitate. I've never been more sure. He nodded. I signed. And just like that, 15 years of marriage began their official countdown to closure. The drive home, if I could even call it home anymore, was quiet. I wasn't nervous. I wasn't angry. I wasn't even sad. I felt something deeper, clarity, like finally wiping a fogged-up mirror and seeing yourself, just yourself. After years of being smudged by other people's fingerprints, Michelle was in the living room when I walked in. Amber was gone back at a friend's, no doubt venting about how heartless I'd become. Michelle stood when she saw the envelope in my hand. "What's that?" she asked, though I could see she already knew. "Divorce papers," I said. I filed. She stared at me, 100 words forming behind her eyes and dying before they reached her lips. "You're really going through with this?" "Yes." "Because of Amber?" "No," I said. "Because of you." She sat down slowly, hands trembling just slightly. "I thought we could fix it." "There's nothing to fix," I said. "You and your daughter made it clear who I am to you. Just the guy who pays the bills. The backup parent. The one who doesn't deserve basic respect." She looked like she wanted to argue, but the words didn't come. I kept going. "You didn't defend me when she humiliated me. You encouraged it. And when I finally set a boundary, you called me petty. You weren't angry I cut her off. You were angry the gravy train ended. I was never your husband, Michelle. I was your safety net." Tears welled in her eyes, but they didn't move me. "Not this time. People say divorce is a failure," I continued. "But staying in a marriage where I'm invisible? That's the real failure. I'm just choosing not to keep failing." She wiped her face, her voice cracking. "So that's it? You're done?" "I was done the day you looked at me and said, 'You deserve this.' That was the last time I ever let someone tell me that my loyalty was weakness." I left the envelope on the table, packed the rest of my things quietly, and didn't look back as I walked out. There were no grand speeches, no dramatic farewells. Just the sound of my own footsteps, steady and certain. I moved into a small apartment 2 weeks later. Nothing fancy. One bedroom, clean walls, a modest view of a park I hadn't walked through yet. I bought myself a new coffee maker. Got a couch I actually liked. And every morning, I woke up without the weight of someone else's disappointment on my chest. Some nights I'd think back, on Amber, on Michelle, on everything I gave that was never acknowledged. But those thoughts didn't haunt me. They reminded me of who I was, of what I'd allowed, and of what I'd finally chosen. People love to talk about forgiveness, about family, about how we're supposed to work through things. But there's a kind of peace that only comes when you walk away from people who never saw you as enough. And I earned that peace the day I stopped asking for permission to feel like a man in my own house. I didn't lose a family. I walked away from an illusion, and I've never looked back. If this story resonated with you, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more powerful, real-life dramas that explore the complexities of family, loyalty, and self-respect. Share your thoughts below. Have you ever had to draw a line to protect your peace? Your voice matters here. See you soon in the next story.